Today on Ag News Daily.
Be aware of policies that are being discussed in Washington, D.C. They have an enormous impact on your bottom line. Because if we can't pay a high dollar for soybeans, it's going to put a crunch on your bottom line. So just pay attention to what's going on in Washington, D.C. and try to influence your policymakers.
Hey, listeners, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. This is Tanner, and we've got JC joining us for her first news rendition. Welcome.
Yes, I'm excited to be here, and hopefully it's not too rocky today.
That's correct. No kidding. We did have a little conversation before we started about how fast the week went for the both of us, but so is this year. We're almost halfway done with 2025.
That's kind of crazy because mentally I'm still in 2016 somehow. My parents refused to see that I graduated high school, so it feels like time is really flying by.
I don't write checks very often anymore, but the last check I wrote 2024 on. So I'm still a year behind myself.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of weather this week in the Midwest. Recent rains have eased the drought concerns that were here. However, there are still dry pockets remaining in eastern Iowa, parts of southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois, and central Michigan as well. A warming trend will bring 90s to the weekend and part of early next week. Some feel like temperatures will be in the 100s. Many of the Midwest states have predicted temps to hit that 100-degree level. So make sure, listeners, you stay hydrated this weekend, especially if you're outside, and keep checking on your loved ones and your livestock. These scattered showers that we saw will continue into next week across this northern plain region. These could help those drier areas, especially that Red River Valley, but rainfall will be spotty as it remains in that pattern due to the cooler conditions earlier this season. We did see, coming from meteorologist Eric Snodgrass, his reports of early summer drought signals have weakened thanks to these rains and the warmer oceanic temperature. The Bermuda High remains in place, keeping that Gulf moisture flowing towards the north, and a warming Gulf of Alaska may shift heat and drought risk into the northwest later this summer. But for right now, quite a bit of rain hitting our area, JC.
Yeah, it feels like it. Here in Nebraska, there's been a lot of thunderstorms, and it seems like I'm getting a text every other day from my school saying we're in a warning or something going on like that. So that's been interesting. Looking at our crop progress, the USDA reports mixed changes in crop conditions this week. Corn and spring wheat improved, while soybeans and winter wheat saw declines. According to the USDA Crop Progress Report, 72% of corn is now rated good to excellent, which is up 1% from last week. Nearly all of the corn crop has emerged, with 94% now above ground. On the soybean side of things, they dropped 2%, with 66% now rated good to excellent. And so far, 93% of soybeans are planted and 84% have now emerged. On the wheat side of things, winter wheat also fell 2%, with 52% in good to excellent condition. 93% of the crop is headed, but harvest is slow at just 10% complete. Spring wheat saw the biggest gain, rising to 57% good to excellent, and now 89% of spring wheat is now planted, with 4% now emerging.
Yeah, the Farm for Profit crew got to be a part of the Custom Harvesters Conference last fall, so we got to connect with a lot of those folks. They've got plenty of time to be on their phones right now because of that moisture, and unfortunately, they're afraid that the wheat quality is going to degrade while it's out there in the field getting wet when they should be out harvesting. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a jump in that harvest completion rate, but doubtful. We did get an update on the screwworm. U.S. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins did break ground on Wednesday on an $8.5 million fly dispersal facility in South Texas. Then return of the new World Screwworm, they will fight that battle. Also, she announced a 5-part plan to stop the spread of this pest. Secretary Rollins said the U.S. has tools and partnerships to be able to stop this threat. She was quoted by saying, "We've defeated this pest before, and we will do that again." The plan begins by boosting sterile fly production in Panama and Mexico to slow that spread. The USDA will increase surveillance and outreach along the border to catch early signs. Emergency teams will be trained with treatments ready for rapid response. This new South Texas facility will start fly dispersal into northern Mexico next year. The USDA is also funding new research and technology to improve their detections and control. Texas leaders are in support of this plan. Governor Greg Abbott called it critical to protecting agriculture. Lawmakers and industry groups say that the new facility is a big step forward to keeping screwworm out of the U.S. The USDA will continue to hold public sessions in the coming weeks to get input from others on next steps and best case scenarios.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they really kicked off that. And it's exciting to see that more progressive plan to get that going. But fly dispersal, that's kind of interesting to me.
Absolutely.
President Trump has ordered a pause on immigration raids targeting farms, hotels, restaurants, and meatpacking plants. Reuters says the order came directly from President Trump based on an internal email, a senior official, and someone familiar with the decision. The move rolls back a late May push by White House aide Stephen Miller for stricter immigration enforcement. A source told Reuters the president wasn't aware of the stepped-up raids and pulled back once he found out. On Truth Social, Trump said farmers and hotel owners were losing longtime workers who are difficult to replace. He added that while criminals must be deported, industries relying on undocumented labor need protection. The policy shift comes after recent raids on farms in Ventura County in California, where ICE detained nearly 36 workers. Some agents were turned away for lacking warrants, and additional raids at meat and dairy plants in Omaha, Nebraska, have also led to several arrests and 6 pending deportations. Agricultural groups argue that enforcement campaign is hurting food production, with some farm workers arrested and others too afraid to return to the fields.
Yeah, that is an interesting update there. I know there will be more to come on that topic. We did see, however, an Indiana farm equipment salesman is now facing 17 felony charges on a multi-million-dollar fraud case. Dustin Eichelbarger, formerly with TTG, True Land Equipment in Swayze, Indiana, was arrested on June 11th. He's accused of forging documents and defrauding farmers and lenders out of more than $750,000 between 2023 and 2024. Prosecutors say that he faked purchase orders, forged signatures, and secured over $650,000 in loans under the names of local farmers. Investigators say that he admitted to using that money to cover personal debts. One of the alleged victims, farmer Justin Hanna, says that his name was used and social security number was used to open accounts and sell equipment without permission. This left the family with over $1 million in surprise debt. Court records detail multiple fake sales, including the equipment that never existed or was resold multiple times. Berger is out on a $30,000 bail, but if convicted, he faces up to 6 years for each level 5 felony and up to 2.5 years for each level 6 charge. He remains presumed innocent unless proven guilty.
Yeah, that story really stuck out to me because 17 charges is pretty crazy. And I guess something like that could happen to anybody.
That's correct.
Some more fun news instead of charges. There was a Capitol Hill ice cream party put on by the International Dairy Foods Association. So this popular summer event was held at Union Square Park and brought together members of Congress, federal officials, and staff for a celebration. For over 2 hours, guests enjoyed 4,000 cups of ice cream, more than 1,000 root beer floats, hundreds of ice cream sandwiches, cakes, and other frozen treats. Michael Dykes, the president and CDO of the IDFA, said the event is a tradition that brings people together over America's favorite frozen dessert while recognizing the contributions of the dairy industry. The celebration also highlights the economic impact of ice cream. The industry supports more than 26,000 jobs and generates $2 billion in wages, with a total economic impact of $11 billion nationwide.
That's a lot of ice cream in one day. We did see updates coming from China. China has approved 106 U.S. pork and poultry plants to resume exporting, according to Chinese customs. This approval applies to products made on or after June 12th. This move follows the U.S. and China agreement last month in Geneva that aimed in restoring parts of their trade truce. The newly approved list includes 23 pork plants and 83 poultry facilities. Earlier this year, China imposed tariffs up 15% to $21 billion worth of U.S. ag goods. This was in response to tariffs placed on Chinese exports by President Trump and his administration. Many U.S. meat plants gained access to China under the 2020 Phase 1 trade deal, but several lost their eligibility earlier this year. Pork and poultry registrations have now been renewed, but beef plant approvals still remain expired.
Yeah, that's a good update coming from there, and I'm gonna have to stay tuned to see if any beef plant approvals come into effect there.
Yep.
More than 250 farm, ranching, and agrochemical groups are urging the Trump administration to include their input in future work of the Make America Healthy Again Commission. In a letter sent Tuesday, the group said the commission's first report released in May linked pesticides to health risks without consulting the agricultural industry. They argue their report contains errors and has created unnecessary fear about the safety of the U.S. food supply. President Trump launched the commission in February in coordination with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and the letter was addressed to Kennedy Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. These farm groups say the commission would benefit from inviting public comment and formally involving food and agriculture experts in future work. They're pushing for transparency and scientific accuracy in any findings that could affect farming practices and public perception of food safety here in the United States.
Yeah, we should have a voice when it comes to that. We also saw places that farmers have a voice. The Renewable Fuel Group, they are cautiously optimistic about the EPA's new biofuel blending proposal, calling it a major boost for the industry. The 2026 plan includes 15 billion gallons of conventional ethanol and more than 9 billion gallons of advanced biofuels, including biodiesel and cellulosic fuels. Similar targets are set for 2027. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says he plans to support farmers and aims to lower fuel costs. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins said that it's the boldest proposal yet, offering a long-term certainty for agriculture and biofuels. Of course, we saw Nebraska farmer Greg Anderson. He told Brownfield the mandate helps biofuel plants meet capacity and gives soybean growers a much-needed market. He said, quote, biofuels are now the mainstream fuel. Iowa Congressman Ashley Hinson says the plan strengthens the U.S. energy and creates jobs and supports our rural communities. So I'm excited for our interview this week, JC.
Yeah, kind of going along with that, the Clean Fuels Alliance America has expressed appreciation for the EPA's proposed rule to set the renewable fuel standard volumes for 2026 and 2027. The organization has advocated for setting biomass-based diesel volumes at 5.25 billion gallons. Under the RFS, refiners must either blend specified volumes of biofuels into the U.S. fuel supply or purchase the renewable identification numbers as credit. The EPA proposed quota sets the volume at 7.12 billion gallons. Going into our interview, recently, our Michelle Stangler visited a Clean Fuels Alliance member facility in Central Illinois as part of a tour organized by the association. She spoke with a spokesperson at a soybean crush and biodiesel facility where they discussed market dynamics and the history of the biodiesel tax credit, which was replaced by the 45Z tax credit. Their conversation took place before the EPA's announcement amid lingering uncertainty. While questions still remain, there is growing optimism about the future of clean fuels in the weeks ahead.
Well, we're continuing to learn about the soybean processing industry. I'm here with Kerry, who is with the company that processes a lot of soybeans and makes biodiesel. So first, Kerry, tell me a little bit about who you are and who the company is.
My name is Kerry Fogarty. I'm the Quality Control Manager here at Incobrasa Industries. We've been a soybean crusher in central Illinois since 1997, and then we started into the biodiesel industry in 2007, really is when we got active into that. We've been going ever since. So.
And tell me about the biodiesel. Tell me about the history of it.
For the longest time there was a poor market for the soybean oil that we produce in the crushing part of the plant. There was not usually a problem selling the meal portion of it, which makes up about 80% of the bean, but there was a 20% of the bean that was oil that there wasn't a good market for that. You can only bottle so much vegetable oil. So there was a glut of oil on the market. The market crashed, and the soybean crushers like Incobrasa were having trouble making money off of that. So some farmers in Missouri came up with the idea, hey, we have all this excess oil. What can we do with that? Somebody says, let's make some kind of fuel out of it. So they developed biodiesel out of that excess soybean oil that nobody wanted. And it has grown since 93, when they were just dabbling with it in oil drums, I think in somebody's garage, to a 5 billion gallon per year industry. And we're part of that. So.
Yeah, even if we look at the diesel market, you had the biodiesel has like 10% of that share. Tell me about what the industry looks like right here in 2025.
It's a dicey situation right now. The industry has been aided along by a couple government policies, one of them being the EPA's requirement to utilize X number of gallons of renewable fuel every year. That puts the responsibility on big oil to, at the end of the year, they need to say, we use X number of gallons of renewable fuel at the end of the year to be in compliance. So that's a huge driver for our industry. There has also been a tax incentive that was in place through December of 2024. That went away. And so now the market is trying to figure out what it needs to do. Nobody wants to overpay for biodiesel if there's going to be some kind of tax credit that comes back. They also don't know how many gallons of renewable fuel are going to be required at the end of 2025. So it's a little bit dicey right now. We're ready to go if the market takes off again. But right now there's a lot of places that are shutting their plants down. Fortunately, we haven't gotten to that point yet here at Incobrasa, but I know it's happening across the country just because the demand of biodiesel is about half what it was just in December of 2024. So
wow, just about half.
Yeah, it's dropped off. Yep.
And tell me, let's go back to the 45Z tax credit,
yep.
What it's like called now. Are you getting any benefit right now?
That remains to be seen again. The rules were not very well spelled out about that. We should be able to take advantage of that, but that is where the previous was a biodiesel tax credit, you were actually paid. This is actually a reduction of your tax burden that you have at the end of the year, which adds another challenge to it. People need to wait till the end of the year to the tax filing season of the next year to recoup any benefits they might have had from the previous year's biodiesel sales. So that's going to be a difficult process for a lot of people. Smaller companies like us, probably even more so.
And tell me about where your mindset is at today, biodiesel.
Congress will figure something out. So we're waiting on that. There's the bill passed through the House. The Senate just needs to pass a bill that will be compatible with what the House came through. I think once that comes through, I think people will have some idea of the landscape, so they'll know what to do. Marketers don't know what to do. Obligated parties, big oil that have to comply with the EPA law, they don't know what to do either. So once we get 45Z in place, and once the required volume of fuel for big oil comes out, I think things will loosen up. It'll start taking off. I don't want to speculate, but hopefully by midsummer that will take off, because obligated parties are gonna have to use some renewable fuel throughout 2025. So eventually they're gonna have to start buying some, because they've held up. We're at 50%. Most people are at 50%. So that's going to have to be made up at some point in time before the end of 2025. So
let's talk about the Renewable Fuel Standard.
Yes. That
was hoped to be done by the end of May, and now we're into June.
Yeah, it was supposed to be done last October, but we're still waiting on those numbers. Fortunately, it seems like a lot of people are aligned with what that number should be, our 5.25 billion gallons is our hope. We are aligned with the Petroleum Institute, which is kind of a strange bed partner that they're alongside of us with that. We are also part of the National Oilseed Processors Association, the bean crushers. That number came from a lot of studies to make sure there was enough feedstock to support 5.25 billion gallons. So everybody was aligned with that number. So we're hopeful that the EPA's ears are open and they'll heed our word. So
yeah,
we'll see.
And when we look at the marketplace today, are we having more buyers, more sellers?
We have a lot of waiters. Everybody's waiting. They're waiting on these policies to come through. The industry's there. I mean, the production capacity is there. The feedstock is there. We just need the market to settle out. And once that settles out, I think it'll take off. So it'll be fine.
Now, I've had the chance to tour your Illinois facility that you have here in Central Illinois. Tell me about, you have a project that you're kind of waiting on. Tell me about...
We do. We have, in addition to... in the process, which has already started, we're about 2 years into a 3-year project of doubling the soybean crush capacity. So we will have that much more vegetable oil available. We currently have a 75 million gallon per year biodiesel plant. Depending on these policies that we're waiting on, we have the plans, we have the space, we have everything designed out for a second 75 million gallon biodiesel plant. We're just waiting. We're part of the waiters. Yeah. So as soon as we know what's going on with that, we'll stick a shovel in the ground and start making another biodiesel plant because we will have the feedstock at that point. So
now, what happens if you don't? There's not optimism there, and
yeah, what?
A lot of what ifs.
Yeah, a lot of what ifs. Yep. Fortunately, we do package vegetable oil here as well, so we do have a smaller outlet for the vegetable oil. A lot of places don't have that. They are completely reliant on biodiesel to get rid of their oil, for lack of a better word. But we do have a packaging plant that we could expand that probably if we needed to. But we're not to that point yet. Let's not cross that bridge until we have to.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that vegetable oil. I think it's very, when I purchase vegetable oil in the store, I don't really think about soybean oil.
Yep, most of it is. If it says vegetable oil on the bottle, it's probably soybean oil. It might be a little blend of sunflower oil or something like that. Most of the vegetable oil producers are in the Midwest in the United States, which means soybean oil. So unless it says corn or canola on it, it's probably soybean oil.
Why is that?
It's plentiful. It's here. Yeah, it's easy to produce. It helps the local economies around here. And like we mentioned before, people are crushing soybeans to make animal feed, the meal. You have that byproduct right there, the oil anyway. So whether you look at it as a byproduct or the actual product, it's tomato. But yeah, you're going to get both out of it. You're going to get meal and oil. You got to do something with both of them. So
now another outlet that you are sharing your oil with is the USAID program, or was?
We do, yeah. That's on thin ice right now, as everybody knows. We participated in that program for, I'm going to say, 5 years. We built a can line specifically for that. The USAID program requires 4-liter round tin cans of vegetable oil to go overseas, whereas, most of our domestic vegetable oil is some kind of plastic bottle or jug. They wanted these metal cans to be shipped overseas because they can use the oil that's in them, and once the oil is gone, they use them for frying pans, and they spread them out, use them for shingles and that type of thing. But with the cutback on the USAID program, those bids essentially went away the first quarter of 2025. They are slowly coming back, so we're hopeful that once the smoke clears, that program will be back in place. And we're not the only ones affected. They buy a lot of other things other than vegetable oil. They buy rice, they buy all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of programs that got affected by that.
Now, I know that we're talking a lot about the oil of the soybean, but let's talk a little bit about the mash and where you're seeing the value of that.
The mash?
The others.
Oh, the meal?
The meal.
The soybean meal. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. The soybean meal. Yeah, that's been a fairly steady market for us. I know that may become a challenge because there's 30% more crush capacity coming online in the United States, and you're going to have to go someplace with that meal as well. Our meal goes domestically to large poultry farmers. So depending on how much of this extra 30% crush comes online, I mean, we're doubling our capacity, so we're going to have twice the amount of meal to sell at some point in time. So there's a market for it out there. I mean, it's animal protein, so that's going to keep the cost of animal, poultry, keep that down. So yeah, we're positive there's going to be a market for it. If we have to go to a foreign market, we have the ability to do that as well, but we're going to focus on the domestic market initially, so we'll see.
What was the thought process in building that extra facility? Did you see a huge opportunity for that market?
To feed the biodiesel plant. That was the driving force behind that. The demand for biodiesel kept going up. We already knew how to make biodiesel. We had a facility that could actually use more vegetable oil than our current crushing plant would produce. So we needed additional vegetable oil to feed that plant, and we also wanted to expand the biodiesel as well. So they kind of go hand in hand. We'll have twice as much oil to deal with over there, which will feed a bigger biodiesel plant, or two smaller ones actually.
And that's been a few-year project in the working, so I assume that you were hoping it was going to continue to grow, and that was the risk you took.
Of course, yeah, it was. Yep. The future looked bright enough at one point in time that, yeah, we need to do this. The beans are available, so let's take advantage of this. So, yeah, whether it happens next week or next year, I don't know that, but I think the future will be fine in the long run. Mm-hmm. There will be plenty of outlets for the oil and the meal. So.
And one last thing to really touch upon is just the capacity that you're really holding here. You're railing in from other plants.
So elevators, yep.
Other elevators.
Yep. So we get all of our soybeans from about a 50-mile radius right now. We don't import any beans. Everything comes from right here. I mean, there's no point in importing. We have the best soybeans on the planet right here in this area right here. So currently we get beans from about a 50-mile radius of the plant. The expansion will require us to stretch that out to probably 80 miles of radius of the plant, but still all domestically sourced beans. Mm-hmm. So.
What would be your message to farmers as they produce a lot of soybeans?
Just be aware of policies that are being discussed in Washington, D.C. They have an enormous impact on your bottom line, because if we can't pay a high dollar for soybeans, it's going to put a crunch on your bottom line. So just pay attention to what's going on in Washington, D.C., and try to influence your policymakers.
Cool. Thank you so much, Kerry.
That's your thing.
What a great interview. We do want to remind our listeners that late last Friday, the EPA did share the guidelines to the Renewable Fuel Standard. That provided some certainty, except the market is still trying to figure that out right now. And we'll continue to watch that in the news throughout the next coming weeks. And that'll be a hot topic that will follow, Tanner.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of markets trying to figure out what news to digest and how to move forward. Talking fertilizer first, taking a look at Josh Linville's update this week on the fertilizer market. The nitrogen market is under pressure now from global conflict. The Israel-Iran conflict is shutting down nitrogen production in both Iran and Egypt. At the same time, Ukraine had attacked a Russian plant, so further straining that supply. China is limiting their exports, and Europe remains below full production due to high gas costs. So despite all of this, it was a surprise to see prices stayed stable until now. Urea in New Orleans has surged from $345 to $425 per ton. India's latest tender was disrupted by conflict and will likely need to be retendered. The phosphate supply still remains tight. China is still exporting less, and U.S. production is at record lows. Tariffs on imports from Morocco and Russia are still in place. A review is underway, but big changes are unlikely. The phosphate to corn price ratio is still at the highest on record for this time of year. Potash prices are firm. India and China signed contracts at higher levels than last year. Sellers now control the market. In North America, summer fill prices are expected to hold steady. Israel-Iran, the conflict there is also weighing heavily on oil prices this week, as oil prices are up 3% to their highest levels since January. Commodity markets aren't heavily trading on this news, but we will continue to watch to see what happens this weekend with our extreme heat and weather, especially in wheat country and with wheat harvest now well underway. So not a lot of news there on the crop market side, JC, but we'll continue to keep an eye on that. It'd be interesting to see what kind of news comes about. The very own co-host of Farm for Profit, Corey, said that I'm going to say the last 50 years, can't quote me on this. This is not a direct headline. In the last 50 years, the price of corn, I want to say November corn or December corn, has exceeded the February crop insurance established price. And this could be the first year that doesn't happen over that long term. So I'll try and find that information. We might be able to put that out on social media for our listeners to reference. But it'll be interesting to see if it's the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to keep up with. And especially when I hear years thrown around, 50 years, that's way older than I am. It's just crazy to think about that. Stuff is breaking and things are going different ways this year.
That's correct. Now, I did see a note here in our news for this week. You have a championships competition coming up. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so next week on Monday, I leave at 1 a.m. to go to Georgia for Skills USA. It's like a career technical organization, and I'm competing in video production over there, so that'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, a lot of people do welding and carpentry there. It's a pretty big thing, so I think it'll be a lot of fun. My first time going, so we'll see.
Well, good luck. You've got the whole Ag News Daily audience rooting for you. Appreciate you, audience members, 1, for the support, and 2, for the continued connection. So continue to follow us on our social media channels. Follow that YouTube, hit subscribe. We always appreciate that. But JC, for this week, what do you say? Should we let the listeners go?
We can let them go.